Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Battle Spirits Saga video. And today I get to talk about the Oceania launch event that happened for Battle Spirits Saga just this past weekend. And of course, a huge shout out to the Nerdman on Discord, and then also Let's Play Games for hosting it. And well, there's actually YouTube coverage you can go watch. So if you actually want to go watch any of these rounds, see how the game's played out, what have you, I will have a link to that down in the comments section to the full playlist. So, you can go enjoy more Battle Spirits Saga content. And it was really awesome to see this all come together. And I did get to go through all the lists, put it together a full report, top 8 and all that stuff. And I will pass all this on to Eggman as well. So we'll at least have a centralized area for all the deck lists of all the launch events once we, continue to collect them. The last thing I'll kind of add here on the end before we get into it is I'm still waiting to hear back from Latam. I know Eggman is doing North America, and then I'm not sure who is doing London, but someone will. So, as I just mentioned in my video yesterday, it's unfortunate that's kind of all spread out and whatnot, but hopefully myself and others can work together and get these all out for everybody so we can finally have all the launch event capped data and what have you, right? It's really nice to be able to finally talk about and share some lists. So that said, let's get into the overview of itself, right? So we have the overall meta, and yes, the small disclaimer I'll add here is that some of these, right, the versions of Nova especially, there was like Nova Splash Sturm Dyna, Nova Splash a couple purple cards, Nova Splash Bishop, Nova Splash, yada, yada, yada. But it was, 4 cards off, and they're all basically the same list. So I did, as I use my old disclaimer here, archetypes are combined in that regard, but they're similar enough that in a normal breakdown, you would probably combine them anyways. Now, there were decks like Giganorex and some modified starters and things that would fall into this like other category, and that's just what the Battle Spirits card back represents. But surprisingly or not surprisingly, the 4 big decks that we saw were, Good Stuff Nova, Good Stuff Curse Dragon, Elephant Control, and yes, it is going to be, again, all variants here, but they were all mostly, very dominant in the white color, and then having, 4 cards in red, things of that nature, right? Where it's 40 of the 50 cards were white, and then maybe some splashes, and then the 2-cost rush, to my surprise, there was 14. That's why I used Prince Penton there. So overall, kind of what we expected, and hey, spoiler, what I said in, leading up to the Vegas event is red will probably be the most popular. And again, I didn't count the Giganorex and all the other like low red types of decks that were in there. Those in the other category, but clearly there was a very heavy favor towards red and purple, to be fair, but red was the most played overall in the grand meta. So not all that surprising that we are going to see yellow drop out once we get into top 8. So I hope that we do get to see other just like meta overviews, because it's really nice to see, what everyone's bringing. And then, of course, for these events, a lot of it I think was impacted by either the tabletop simulator metas, what people are just testing locally, right? And we didn't get to see a lot of those other X-rares really get their spotlight, because a lot of these lists are, as I was looking through all 102 players, there was a lot of similarities, and it's a small card pool. So, take that for what it's worth. But Elephant Control was Elephant Control, right? Like there wasn't a lot of like groundbreaking innovation that had happened from the, tabletop similar events or other lists that we've been talking about or expected to see. Now that said, there were a couple spicy brews. Don't get me wrong. There was some spice that I saw in the overall list, but I think a lot of these, if you were to show every single player all 102 decks, you'd say, yeah, that's what I expected, right? For someone who's been following the meta and what I think people expected to see in these events, by and large, it was the expected results that we got out of it. That said, what did this break down to? What did top 8 look like? And I did confirm they did a cut for top 8, so we're only going to be having a couple lists looking at top 8. Obviously, in Vegas, it was a top 32 cut, so Eggman or other sites and resources might report that out differently, but just for a quick breakdown, right, we have the top 8. So winning the most slots in number 1 was Nova, and this is a couple small variations of it, and we'll talk about that when we get to the actual list breakdown, but it was Chi Sing Sang, and I believe I am pronouncing that right. Please forgive me if I did not, with Curse Dragon, where Curse Dragon was only 2 lists in the top 8. Elephant Control, which again, a white-focused Elephant Control made top 8. And then the last one, which we are going to talk about, was a very heavy purple-white splash, and this one I really like, because as we're going through a lot of these lists, it's like, oh, well, you can splash a couple cards, or, you know, like Deadly Balance and Burning Force, cards that are just good enough, you get easy to splash, things of that nature. But this list is really showing how Battle Spirits and Battle Spirits Saga as a card game overall is like, no, you can have multiple colors in a deck if you really want to, and you can see how that comes together. So I would say overall, based on what we saw from the meta review of all 102 players, more or less what I would expect to see for a top 8. And then I would have to personally go back and watch the, you know, round after round to see how the top 8 broke down, how the matchups go and all that. But generally speaking, not surprised to see, you know, Nova, Curse Dragon, or Elephant Control win any of these events that we're going to be seeing reported out, you know, over the next week. Again, Vegas, Oceania, London, Europe, I should specify, and LATAM. So really curious to learn what the other events had, but just a quick run of that. So getting in the list, and I do apologize because I had to put my webcam here, that a couple of these got cut off. But up first, we do have the Cursed Dragon variant. So again, fairly stock, right, from what we'd expect to see, and some of the developments coming out of the, you know, tabletop simulator meta or what have you, right? Just personal testing metas that people had. Still keeping in the 2 core theft. I do really like. I think that card is still something that you want some number of in your 60. The Maduke really just helping out against red and white because she can just be a multi-blocker, and she, you know, forces that last point of damage a lot of time. But overall, kind of what we'd expect. But again, huge shout outs to the winner, making bank, and also just, you know, getting purple to win event. Because I think it was what? Purple, 2 white decks, 1. And I don't think we've had the 4th one reported yet. But overall, definitely we'd expect to see from a purple Cursed Dragon list. Do like the 4 Camelot Knight as well here, because you have the Maduke, and that can, you know, as we talked about in the Curse view in the past, there are going to be board states where you just level up Maduke to 6 and say, all right, this Camelot Knight is just going to start swinging away and you're going to die this turn, you know, no matter what, a lot of times. For sideboarding, you know, Agilvale, just more curse, more draw, helps out in the white matchup, cycles itself. Counter Sword, a lot of just good on summons that you want to hit, putting back to top of deck and really set your opponent back a turn. Star Blessed, we talked about how good this card was yesterday. I'm going to be not surprised at all to see 4 copies in more decks going forward. And then just rounding out some copies for the rest of them, putting up Burning Force to a full 4, which can just really be good against Nexus heavy decks like Yellow. Yellow really does need their Nexus a lot of times to get that advantage going. But typically overall, just a good purple control list for what we'd expect to see. And I will say that we're only going to talk about 4 lists right now because there was some overlap in top 8. So, you know, do take that with a grain of salt. There might be some other small variations, but again, the full top 8 will be thrown over to Eggman to put onto the website. Moving on from there with our second place, we have a Elephant Control list. Now, this one I did like. The one that really stuck out to me was the main deck, not sideboard, but main deck Forest of Steel Leaves. Maybe they just expected a lot of red and a lot of destruction-based effects, but hey, you just really want your Machine Beast City to stick around so you can lower the cost reductions of your elk and of your elephant, right? That makes sense. But I would really love to see, you know, with Nova being the most played deck, you know, it makes sense, but I'm curious to see how their testing going up to this event, you know, brought them to that point where they wanted 3 copies of it just to absolutely make sure they had it. And I would not be surprised if this got a lot of people game 1. As I talked about in a previous video, I also really like Durham Dyna in a lot of these lists as a 1 to 2 of, and you'll see that kind of, it's going to go a bit underrated as it were, but if you look at kind of these lists across the board, like Durham Dyna did a lot of work this weekend, it looks like, for just expecting a white heavy meta, and that's fair, right? If you have a Durham Dyna, your opponent's going to be playing Nexus cards, you're going to be playing Nexus cards, or just in general, if you're going up against white, just unblockable is one of the strongest things that you can be doing, right? Your answers then to a Durham Dyna that's attacking are very, 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 very narrow. And, you know, we might get some better answers in the future, or, you know, sometimes you just absolute ice shield from hand, go to 1, and then hope you win on the following turn. But yeah, it's pretty good against elk. And the one thing that I really like too here is the Buffalong Bill. This is a card I think that you have to either play this or Odin, depending on what part of the meta you think that you're going to be seeing from what targets you want to be bouncing, right? Like Odin obviously doing a lot more work against the very lower to the ground, you know, 3 and less style things, where Buffalong Bill can bounce some curse units by comparison. But what I really love, and what I was using in my version of the Elephant Control, is sometimes the level 3 effect is just super relevant, right? Getting to turn Enterprise into a double attacker, right? Or if you have some other, that there's not any in this list, but there are other spirits that you'd want to use their one blocks effect, right? There's other benefits that you can be getting from this, and he was surprisingly good. It's just a very annoying blocker for a lot of decks. And then from there, we have, the one more Durham die in the sideboard. The 2 bullet ray, I just assume, is going to be for more lower aggressions. Like a 2 for 5 is really good, right? The one that really struck me as interesting, and I'm going to try, if anyone can help me track down the player, or if you're this player and you can comment down below, let me know. But I was really interested to see the marigolds here, and just like wanting to really dig for those spells. So I'd be very curious to know what the sideboarding plan was. I'm not even going to try to speculate, if only because I have not, played the list to that level of refinement, just in general. But I think it's a really nice option. Like if you just really need to hit an early drop that can find you like a Burning Force against yellow, or you want to find a Star Blessed draw to punish purple, yeah, I could definitely see it. But I was really curious when I saw that. I'd love to get more feedback on, the thought process and the sideboarding plan behind there. And then, of course, just jumping all around here, the last one card, Fula. We've been seeing more and more of this main deck against the purple meta that a lot of people were expecting. So no surprise there. Just a great card to have in the main deck, as long as purple stays as relevant as it is. Protect your Enterprise, have a good blocker, and just be able to protect your board through some really annoying core stripping effects. Moving on to our top 4, we have one of the Nova decks, and mind you, 2 of the Nova decks were almost the exact same, so I'm guessing that they were teammates or friends or something, because both of them were like a very heavy Nova-focused deck with a Durham Dyna splash. As we just mentioned, Durham Dyna just being a good card against white decks in general, or, if the game goes long, sometimes unblockable is going to kill them, right? Does do a lot of work in that regard. But what I like about this is it's closer to what I like to call low Nova, where you have all these free spirits. So like the 3-cost Spirit Eagle, the Dragno Guard. I think we did see a little bit of this in Vegas. Now, I know there was like the all-in aggro decks, but there's a couple different ways that you can build Nova depending on how you want to attack the meta, and I did really like to see this variant as well. Of course, we have the 8 draw cards. We have the full Nova Big Bang combo to heal up, get a big guy for free. 4 Burning Force, really just all the Nexus hate and removal, and then the Nexus cards themselves are pretty stock. The one small disclaimer I have to add to this list is you'll notice it is just over 50. But in the deck registration picture, part of it was cut off, so it was hard to see the exact numbers on some of these. Like Charge Draw, if I remember correctly, I could only see a single copy of Charge Draw in the photo, which I just assume is not right. But I couldn't tell if it was like a 3 of, right, or a 2 of even. So some of these numbers might not be 100% exact. It was just what was listed what was shown in the photo. So I am doing my best guess on that one. But then the sideboard and the rest of that stuff, did give us a little bit of information where Scorched Battlefield was cut off, but there was 1 on the sideboard, so it can only be 3, right? You can't have 5 copies of a card in the deck. But this card, again, a lot of talks over this past weekend from Vegas with Star Blessed Draw just doing a lot of work. Purple just hates to see it. Yellow just hates to see it. And sometimes, if you're playing red, you get the cost reductions. Just a 2 to draw 2 is fine against white, because they're not obviously going to have a lot of unsummon effects. So you can get just more card draw and keep going through your deck that way. Sideboard is a lot of what we have come to expect from the previous events. Do like the Counter Sword, do like the Dream Bomb. I gotta give a shout out to the Flame Emperor here, though, as well, because that's a card that I think can be pretty spicy if you line up with the meta correctly for it. It's just going to hit on summons of 4,000 or less. And against purple, and especially against yellow sometimes, it could just delete a lot of stuff. So I like it as an option or a card to consider for your sideboard. So again, Nova as a deck overall, I expect to see a lot more in the future. So make sure you're familiar with this list and start practicing against it. It's going to be at the launch events, or the LGS release events, So just know to expect it. Like, this is a card, all 4, I guess I should say, of these decks are something that should 100% be on your radar for testing. And then the last one, just to call out like the last really unique list from the top 8. Again, there was some overlap in the list, so I'm just trying to do like the quick overview of what made top and kind of the differences between them. And then Eggman will have up the full 8. But the last one was a purple-white control. And, you can just take a moment to take this in. This is a very dedicated purple splash white, white splash purple, whichever way you want to say it, right? It is a color mixed deck in this regard. It has the Dark Bishop Curse Dragon combo. It has the full 4 elephants. It has Enterprise on backup. It has Netherworld Depths to just draw you a bunch of cards and attack the mirror, because Depths can help you kill Enterprise. Glass Bear for the ramp, Fula for the purple protection. I like this. This is just a lot of good cards, right? And then obviously the Burning Force as well. I have to give a shout out to Burning Force because it's just God, I can't think about how much that foil is going to cost. It's just a really good card, a card I expect to see a lot more through all of set 1, because Nexus removal is important, and then also just sometimes blowing up 2-3Ks is really, really strong. You know, there's no question there. So really do like this as well. I thought the Ryut in the sideboard was also a really nice tech option as well for Nova. And then just some extra copies of cards that you would expect, right? Camelot Knight, great low drop with Curse that can help pressure damage, get through the White Mirror. Heavy Barrel for Nova as well. Elk being, well, Elk if the match is slower and you just want a 3rd copy of Elk. And then Suppression and Peggy for aggro matchups in general. So overall, very solid list. Really loved to see, you know, a dedicated, this is a 2-color deck make top in one of the events. Because as soon as set 2, and, you know, arguably people are doing it now, but, you know, in the very near future, I mean to say, we will probably get dual color support. What will be first? Who knows? But it does give us an option of like what to look forward to and to start thinking about these style of decks, because they will be a thing at some point in the near future. But with those out of the way, with the recap, the top 8, a couple example lists, what does that leave us with? And well, I think that we can all agree at this point that Nova, or at least red in general, is going to be kind of the deck to focus on, or the color to focus on, going into the release events at the store level. Will this maintain going into Tournament Pack 1 promos, which will be right around the corner, or EXO1, which is shortly after that? Who knows? But if you are going to your local game store and you are looking for a deck to play or a deck to beat, I definitely think that Nova is on the radar for just about everyone after these launch events. And again, hopefully we can get more from Latam. I know Eggman's working on North America, which will be up sometime soon. They'll all, of course, be on the Eggman Events website and all that stuff. But, you know, hopefully in the future, these will be, as I mentioned in my video yesterday, they'll be more of an official source that shares out all this information. Again, happy to do it. I love getting lists out there, talking about the events, but hopefully the coverage for all the launch events or the, you know, the GPs that happens in other regions, just put it on Facebook or something, right? Hopefully it's done a little bit better. But with that, I still have to, you know, go schedule a couple calls with some other people, hopefully try to get some interviews up on the channel. But again, otherwise going to be just taking this week off to recover before we get back into like gameplay videos and all that stuff. So please do look forward to it. Make sure to like and subscribe for future Battle Spirit Saga content and all that good stuff. But with that out of the way, my friends, have a great rest of your week. Make sure to stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.